The ceasefire in the Middle East is currently holding as we await the release of all of the remaining hostages. President Trump is expected to arrive in the region tomorrow with trips to both Egypt and Israel for the signing of his historic peace agreement. Palestinians are already returning to northern Gaza, while the U.S. delegation to the Middle East spoke at Hostages Square in Tel Aviv today.
It's a triumph of faith, of courage, and of our shared humanity.
President Trump on this, his commitment to seeing peace, to seeing the hostages return home, to seeing Israel secure and safe, and to seeing the entire Middle East stable and thriving is unmatched.
To the hostages themselves, our brothers and sisters, you are coming home. Your endurance, your faith, your will to live have been symbols of the human spirit that cannot ever be broken.
Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Jennifer?
Tommy, the release of the hostages is expected to begin late Sunday into early Monday morning. We saw earlier tonight all of the emotion here in Tel Aviv as tens of thousands of Israelis joined the families of hostages in Hostage Square here in Tel Aviv, spilling out into the streets of Tel Aviv. So many people, so many emotions as they can't believe that this 2-year national nightmare is finally about to end. U.S. Chief Negotiators Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner addressed the emotional crowd and thanked President Trump.
In the worst of times, he refused to accept the idea that peace in the Mideast was out of reach.
And as we close this chapter, let's learn from the challenges and the pain of the last few years, and let's do our best to make Israel, to make the region, to make the world as peaceful, to build bridges of understanding, to eliminate hatred in ourselves, hatred for others, and to really lead with love and understanding.
The crowd erupted in cheers of "Thank you, Trump" every time the president's name was mentioned. The president's daughter, Ivanka, praised the hostages and their families.
And the president wanted me to share, as he has with so many of you personally, that he sees you, he hears you, he stands with you, always.
Witkoff and Kushner visited Gaza with the head of the IDF and U.S. Central Command today to confirm Israeli troops had completed their redeployment to an agreed-upon withdrawal line in Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians inside Gaza have begun streaming north in a mass exodus back to their homes, which are now mostly rubble. Thousands of Palestinians are still buried beneath the rubble. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon Friday, Secretary Hegseth met with the defense minister of Qatar and announced a new partnership with Qatar in Idaho.
Today, we're signing a letter of acceptance to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility at the Mountain Home Air Base in Idaho.
Hegseth later clarified that it is not a Qatari air base that will be in Idaho, but it will be some hangars and a building and some facilities where Qatari pilots can come and practice on F-15 fighter jets. There's a long partnership between the U.S. military and Qatar. And also, of course, the Qataris played a very key role in the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, the ceasefire, and the release of hostages that we expect in the coming hours. Tommy?
Thanks so much, Jennifer. We have a lot of questions for you, but I think for me, we saw the sights and sounds out of Israel, of course, at Hostages Square, and so many folks there crediting President Trump with this historic deal, celebrating President Trump and his work towards peace there. Can the same be said about these Palestinians who are now returning home? What can you tell us about their sentiment? Are they also crediting President Trump with the success here?
We haven't heard as much in terms of praising President Trump from the Palestinian side. I think right now they are still in shock at returning home to what is basically 90% of the Gaza Strip is rubble at this point. There are still nearly 10,000 Palestinians estimated to possibly be buried under that rubble. So there is still a great deal of trauma. I think we've seen a lot of elation in the Palestinian areas, but in terms of thanks to the U.S. and the negotiators, I think there's a good deal of fear of what's coming ahead, because it is not clear who's going to be running Gaza. It's not clear whether Hamas will disarm. It's not clear what the path forward is for the Palestinian people. What we do know is that 600 humanitarian aid trucks began moving into Gaza, bringing food and shelter and all sorts of badly needed supplies. That was part of the ceasefire deal. So there is still great need in Gaza, and we will see in the coming days after this first phase is complete. Remember, 2,000 Palestinian prisoners are going to be released from Israeli prisons. Many of them will return to Gaza. Some of them are some of the most hardened Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences for terrorism.
Jennifer Griffin, thank you so much. All right, I want to bring it out to the table now. Joey, I have so many questions for you. I can't even decide which one I want to ask first. I guess just going off of what she said there about maybe the hesitation from the Palestinian people not knowing who's going to govern them, not knowing if Hamas is fully going to disarm. You've got the most experience with this region of the world of those of us at the table. What's your initial sense of things?
I may have the most experience carrying a gun, but I think Griff's been there quite a bit. You know, I have a question for a guest later in the show, which is, if Palestinians have grown up indoctrinated in not only fighting Israel, but believing their birthright and their mission, their holy war, is to take Israel as their own, I don't know how you ever have anything in Gaza that is Palestinian without there being Hamas. Call it something different, change who writes the check, but the ideology stays there. So I'm sure that's at the forefront of Israel, the leaders of Israel, forefront of their minds. I think the people of Israel are really focused on getting hostages back. I mean, you think we're talking over 100 that were taken, and if they're worried about getting 20 back, that's how desperate they are. 20 that might still be alive, a couple dozen that they believe aren't, and that's where this war is guiding us. I think that Israel's given up a lot to release that many prisoners, people that have taken lives and done wrong.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because, Katie, the New York Times yesterday had a different tale in their headlines, saying that Hamas was giving up a lot of their leverage and taking on a great deal of risk in this peace deal. I don't expect much else from the New York Times, but what is your sense, going off of what Joey just said there, about if Israel should be walking on eggshells, perhaps, and trusting all of this?
Well, first, I think when you watch the rally tonight from Hostage Square, everybody's still holding their breath because the hostages have not been released. And we are working with a terrorist organization that has not kept their word, and they stole these people from their homes. Let's not forget, they stole more than 200 people on October 7th. They murdered the majority of them, and they are now going to release the last 20 after this international pressure, not from the Europeans, but from the Gulf states and the Arab states around them, because all of these countries, whether they've officially said so or not, recognize that Israel is here to stay. It is a legitimate country in the Middle East. That is something that the Palestinian Authority, that Hamas, whether it's in the Gaza Strip or in Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, refuse to acknowledge, and that problem has not gone away. To Jennifer's point about the exchange here, Israel has agreed to release thousands of terrorists, including those who have blown up cafes, suicide bombings, who are serving life sentences. Yep. The list is very long in terms of who these people are, to get their hostages back. So that creates a problem. Finally, to your point about what does Gaza look like, Hamas is already renaming themselves right now as we speak in Gaza. They're out there patrolling the streets as a Palestinian security force. They are calling themselves police officers. They are shooting Gazans as they go back to their homes and accusing them of collaboration or other, crimes that they did not commit. So this is a process that the president has said is one step at a time. There's a reason why there have been 20 parts of this laid out. The most important thing they're focused on right now is getting to tomorrow night and Monday morning with the hostages getting released. And then there will be pressure on all of the other countries, like Qatar, for example, which funded 10-7, to live up to their end of the bargain, to hold Hamas accountable and make sure that there's enough security so this doesn't happen again.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Griff. When I saw this headline about the announcement that Qatar was going to have a facility in the United States, in Idaho, that was jarring for me. I'm sure it was for many folks. We know that President Trump has been trying to create a great relationship with that nation, and maybe a strategic and important one. But to Katie's point there, it's still a little jarring when you consider the ties.
Oh, of course. And listen, I think Americans are going to feel pretty unsettled about it until we feel that we're secure having Qatari pilots here being trained on planes we're sending them. But to Katie's point, I think I would just finally say that, ultimately, President Trump has been so adamant that we're going to get the hostages out, get the ceasefire first, and not focus on the phase 2, which is coming. And that is all about disarmament and Gaza governance. And I think the president's made it pretty clear it's going to take buy-in from Arab states, particularly of Qatar, to lean into that to see whether it's successful, whatever name they fly under. I think you have a good point, Joey.
Yeah.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.